views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff and management of WWDBTV.
Whether she's walking the red carpet or doing interviews, you'll find her with celebrities and all the latest news. She's here, she's there, she's everywhere, she's always on the go. So sit back, relax, and get ready, 'cause it's the Corey Taylor Talks Show.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Corey Taylor Talks, live from Las Vegas. This is actually our first show since the COVID-19 has come into the world, and it's been crazy, and this whole world is just, it's not normal, obviously, and I think everyone's just very stressed out and confused, scared, worried, and really don't know how to feel about this. I am so excited about my guest today, though, because I think she's absolutely the perfect person to give us some guidance. We were actually going to have her on before this all happened, but now I think it's kind of worked out even better because we can actually discuss this and see what's going on. So you guys have been begging to have her back on, so I am just so honored that she agreed to do it again. So we had the one and only Miss Tanath with us. So how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. Currently, well, we're under soft lockdown where I am still, but they're starting to release restrictions. We actually went out for dinner the other night. That was quite nice.
Oh wow, yeah, that's good. It's pretty rare to do right now, yeah. So obviously, I think we need to kind of address kind of the most important thing going on right now. So the COVID-19, it's a very scary thing. There's tons of conspiracies about it, different thoughts about it. What are your thoughts and feelings on this?
Oh boy, so this is tricky because there are some legal restrictions in what people can and can't say. Otherwise,
Right.
They tend to get shut down very hard. I should begin by saying I am not a medical professional. I am not privy to any specific special information from terrestrial sources regarding this matter. My upstairs information, again, I don't know how confident I am in it. I will say that there appear to be a number of agendas going on regarding this particular incident, some of which are maybe less friendly to human interests than others. I will say that right now it signs point to this being more than it looks, but not nearly as dangerous as people first thought. And I think the statistics are bearing that out, especially when you look at the statistics of places like, Sweden and places like that, where it hasn't been too bad, or even my own country of Canada. And that definitely we had an overabundance of caution.
Right. And
this might have been a good idea in some respects, but in other respects, we're starting to reach the point where if we don't start getting people back to work, there may not be enough food and necessities of life to go around very, very shortly. Right. So we do have to balance things like the safety of our elderly and vulnerable people with the necessity to get food and clothing and shelter to every human being. I will say that you should keep a very skeptical eye when you're looking at the claims being made, because there are a number of agendas that seem to want to use this to steer humanity towards a much more dystopian future. And we should push back on that kind of thing at all costs. Never give up your freedoms for liberty or for safety, right? Never give up your liberty for, oh, but this is safer for everyone. No, don't do it. Bad idea.
Yeah. No, I understand exactly what you're saying, because I agree that I think we needed the quarantine and everything, and people to social distance, and I think everyone needs to wear a mask and still keep the like you said, the safety of it, but we do really need to start slowly reopening, and it's doing it safely, and like you said, especially protecting the vulnerable, the elderly. just really keeping them distance, making sure that they're getting all the supplies they need, but slowly start getting back to normal, because, you know, as horrible as this virus is, if we don't start slowly going out there, I think more people will die from riots and, like you said, starvation, anything like that, than this virus. And that's why it's so scary, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring, you know?
Yeah. And I think, you know, before we knew the statistics, before we knew what the possibilities were, an extreme response is not out of line. But
Right.
now that we know, the reaction hasn't caught up with the data. Like, the science is in. This is not a particularly virulent or deadly or bad strain of anything. We don't necessarily need to keep things locked down now that we know. Sweden took a model where they had their vulnerable people self-quarantine. As a result, they haven't seen the same shutdowns in their economic activity. And economics is a lot more than just a bunch of people sitting around in a CEO's boardroom.
Right.
And it's a lot more than the stock market. Economics is the sum of every human activity that produces something. And I don't know about you, but I like to eat. I like to wear clothes in the winter. It gets really cold where I am.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't go without a car, or if you can, you need a bus. And buses get made by someone. Cars get made by someone.
Right.
The food in the grocery store doesn't just appear there every morning. It's shipped on trucks, which are driven by people, processed in plants by people, raised by people doing stuff. If we shut that down, everything stops. Well, have fun. You're not going to be able to afford it. Those of you who are in a city and not attached to farms like I am, well, you're going to have a lot harder time than the people who are living in the rural areas. And quite frankly, the people living in the rural areas are not likely to want to help people in cities, because there is a very big political divide and cultural divide between rural and urban in North America right now.
No, you're absolutely right, and it's really intimidating to think about. And we're in Vegas, and our whole economy is tourism, and I mean, I think they said 300,000 of our casinos jobs were taken away, and it's really scary. And I think Vegas especially is so unique compared to majority of places in this world, and you know, it's just, we don't know what will happen next. And I think that's why we just all need to really remember our core values too, that we're all humans and we're all just people, and we need to love each other and take care of each other. And honestly, I wish this would stop the divide so much. It seems to be actually making it worse, which is kind of crazy. But I think if we look at it in opposite ways and really just take care of each other, I think that's the only way we're really going to be able to get through this.
Well, it does seem to be alerting people, regular people, to the fact that what's been going on behind the scenes is not as benign as everybody sort of assumed, right?
Right.
Like, it's showing really that the emperor has no clothes.
Right.
I tend to not view mainstream traditional media sources except here and there, because the information I have suggests that most of them are not very accurate or trustworthy. But for somebody who spent their entire life relying on those news sources to all of a sudden discover, oh my God, these are not truthful, they're not trustworthy, and in some cases they're just making up stuff out of whole cloth, it's a bit of a shock for people. People have to come out of it, right?
Right.
And I can tell, you know, you see the David Icke and Alex Jones types who sit there screaming till they're red in the face about, you know, how the frogs are gay or whatever.
Right.
And it doesn't really help. But when you start to see that, oh my God, some of the things these people are talking about, maybe not the weird crap, but the more normalized crap about, you know, there being hidden interests behind the scenes who are organizing things, it starts to look really a lot more real to normal people.
Yeah. Well, I think I was just talking about this. I think the most kind of interesting part about this is the whole entire world is dealing with it at the same time. So we're all we're all going through it. Now, like you said, different countries are handling it differently, different places are handling differently, people's beliefs and everything. But for the most part, we're all going through the same thing. We're all dealing with this virus. So it's kind of interesting to see how the world is reacting.
And one thing that really stood out to me is that everyone in Western-type society has been so stressed out, so disconnected from family in the home. It's always, go, 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 work comes first, everything like that. And it's almost like as soon as these shutdown orders were called, we all kind of collectively breathed a sigh of relief. We started to rediscover ourselves and each other and actually just focus on just being and existing for a little while. And I think that has been very good for us psychologically.
Yeah. I
think we've needed that.
Oh, I agree, because you're right. I think you do get so caught up. It's very easy to, especially in today's society. Like you said, everything is work, money, everything, just keep on going. Even myself, I feel like I never have a moment to breathe, and now you're being forced to stop. So, but like you said, it is kind of good in a way that you can actually have that clarity now, and like you said, really think about yourself and the world and your values and everything like that. And I think that's very important. I'm
hoping that some positive changes will come out of this.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we will see that our model was really not sufficient and it was toxic. And I'm hoping that because of that, we will decide collectively as a society that, okay, no, we need to roll this back, right? It can't all be stock prices and 60-hour work weeks.
Right. No, very true. Very true. And so I think we could talk about this virus for hours and hours, but like I said earlier, we were actually going to have you on before this whole outbreak happened. So it's been probably, I think actually it's been over a year now since we last have you. So I also want to talk about whatever other things that are going on in the world and before this happened and what's to come. So what are some new things that you want to kind of share with the audience and stuff? What are some new things going on that we want to kind of focus on or pay attention to?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that the Silver Legion is still quite active. We haven't given up. We haven't stopped. We don't typically announce our actions because a lot of what we do, we need to do covertly. Right. And we also, I've seen a tendency with other groups to sort of say, oh, yeah, we did this or that, and then nothing happens, and there's it's a whole bunch of bragging and nothing changes. Right. So we tend to prefer to speak softly and carry a big stick approach to things, if you're familiar with that phrase.
Right.
We've been looking a lot at the exopolitical situation. Like, I think those who followed me, I guess, from the beginning know that it's not just one or two groups that are involved here. There are hundreds of different groups, all of whom have different agendas, some of whom have competing agendas, some of whom try to present themselves very positively to humanity, but have basically their own desire for a piece of the pie, as it were. So largely we've been mostly involved at the exopolitical level. It's sort of keeping opportunistic parasites from becoming, active here.
Right. Yeah.
We've been watching the geopolitical situation quite closely. When the first stuff started to ripple through the internet and through the whisper lines about COVID back in January, the word I got then is that it wasn't going to be as big a problem as it looked, because at the time it looked very scary. There were all kinds of rumors coming from China, right?
Right.
And we still know that China is not truthful. I'm sorry, anybody who's taking China at its word, you can't take a dictatorship at its word ever.
Oh, yeah.
They're lying about something. If not to us, then to their own people, right? But it was looking extremely scary in January. If you saw the footage then of people falling over in the streets and totalitarian shutdowns and things like that. But the word I got from my people then is that it wasn't as bad as it looked, and just sort of, wait and see, time will tell sort of stuff. Where it comes to, like, say, American politics and stuff, I would have to say that you're going to have to wait and see on that, because there is indications that there are going to be massive radical changes that will shock many people. And some of these things that look pretty innocuous, like the whole Russiagate mess or the Flynn matter, could end up being major pieces of the puzzle.
Gotcha.
Take what your I won't call them colleagues, but take what your counterparts in the mainstream media say with a grain of salt, because most of them are given messages that they are required to say and have zero information about what's actually happening, right? They're not briefed on it either. And with the change in the laws against propagandizing to domestic populations, basically, the United States used to have a law against using propaganda on its own citizens. That law is no longer there. Those protections are no longer in place. So take everything you hear from the mainstream and the supposed official sources with a grain of salt, and be prepared to see massive changes starting all of a sudden. I will say, for the record, if you've heard of the Q phenomenon.
I have not personally.
Okay, yeah, so the QAnon and the Q stuff, from what my sources tell me, this appears to be a legit mouthpiece of white hats. But I'm not working with them. I'm not coordinating with them. I don't have insider information that's reliable on them, so I can't say much more than that, other than my people say that they are legit.
Interesting. Okay, so then obviously, such as myself, if people aren't familiar with that, you suggest looking into that more then.
Yeah, I would say if you're not familiar with the Q stuff, dealing with the Chans, with 8chan and all of that, it can be a little bit Byzantine for people who are just starting out. They are designed to offend you, and this is a kind of self-defense phenomenon for keeping away the quote-unquote normies. So, yeah, understand if you go to the Chans, it's going to be hateful. It's going to be disgusting. You're going to hear stuff that shocks you. You're going to hear racism. You're going to hear stuff against LGBT. And if those are sacred cows for you, it's going to scare you away. These things are deliberate, and they are meant to scare away people who are not psychologically equipped, basically, to question and to go through this information. Essentially, if you're the kind of person who freaks out over a pronoun, you're not going to live a moment in 8chan.
Right. Gotcha. So you just kind of need to know yourself, is what you're saying, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I gotcha.
They are offensive, and they are offensive deliberately to keep people like that out.
Yeah. Interesting. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. It's basically to keep the people they know will continue on doing. And I think it is kind of interesting to learn all sides of everything. I don't think you can really, like you said, I don't think you can take everything and just believe what you're hearing from, like you said, especially the mainstream media. We have so much knowledge available to us, but then at the same time, we're not using it to our advantage. So we are just listening to what's given to us and not doing any more research into it, which is kind of scary. But people just believe what they're hearing. So that's kind of what you're saying, is we need to kind of dig a little deeper and take it upon ourselves.
Exactly. It's very much buyer beware, right?
Right.
The consumer of the information, the impetus is on the consumer of the information to do their due diligence and make sure it's real. Because you'll hear all kinds of horse shit. Pardon my language.
No, you're fine. We're internet. We're good. Don't worry. And so I do kind of want to ask, too, because this was another thing that I'm really surprised more people haven't been talking about, but I especially wanted to ask you, what do you feel about the release of the videos the Pentagon has released last month?
Oh, well, so this is also in association with that Tom DeLonge movement, right?
Right.
We have a terminology for things like this. Limited hangout.
Gotcha.
Have you heard that term? Are you familiar with what it is?
I've heard it before. I kind of know, but not really.
A limited hangout is when you have something that you want to keep under wraps. You sort of designate a designated leaker or a designated mouthpiece to sort of go out and be the champion of that information, and thus release the information that you want while holding or obscuring the information that you don't want released. So Tom DeLonge, if you look at the people who are working with Tom DeLonge, it's big names in the defense industry, but it's also people like John Podesta. And if you're at all familiar with your internet conspiracy theories, well, the name Podesta is kind of up there with the names Epstein and Clinton and then things like that. Yeah, so, anytime I see that kind of involvement, I have to go, I don't think we're getting the whole story here.
Right. Well, I know those videos were leaked, probably a few years ago, and so it was kind of interesting that now they just released those 3 videos.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder about the timing, like why now?
Right.
It's getting to the point, I think, where they can't keep a lid on things like that anymore.
Right.
And I think that might be why. But we call this a kind of a controlled disclosure. We're pushing for full and absolute disclosure, and I know a lot of groups that are this kind of dribbling out information. It's not going to save those assholes. They might think it will, but there is no game plan that they can come up with that will actually see them remain intact and doing what they're doing now. Sorry, but no, you're just not getting that chance. Game over.
Yeah.
At some point, they'll realize it. Hopefully, before they die.
And so, are those videos legit? Because I know there's people questioning if they were even legitimate videos or if they were just completely fake. Do you believe they were legitimate videos?
I haven't viewed them. I've heard of them, but I haven't viewed them. I mean, I have my own encounters with entities and UFOs and things like that I no longer get excited over somebody's UFO sighting. It's
right.
like, okay, but yeah, I haven't felt the need to look at them. I'm going to say that if the Pentagon is releasing them, if these mainstream sources are releasing them, chances are it's not somebody's CGI thing from their CGI school.
Right. Right.
Chances are it's probably a legitimate posting. I suspect in these cases, from the descriptions of the craft, and from what I've had whispered in my ear when I hear it mentioned, this sounds like the work of various secret space programs, which you may have encountered as a concept previously.
Right. Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do you think it is aliens involved, or do you think it's more government crafts or whatever, like you're saying?
Yeah, so I asked my liaison, I'm like, whose are these? When somebody ever mentions UFOs, the first question I ask is not, okay, is this faked or not? My first question is, okay, if these are real, whose are they? Right? Because there's way more than one group out there that's producing these things.
Yeah.
And what has come back to me is that these are SSP craft.
And
for the most part.
And I don't mean to sound stupid, but what does that mean?
Sorry, SSP is shorthand for Secret Space Program.
Okay.
Throughout, I guess you could say, recorded human history, there have been several civilizations who have created what I guess you could call breakaway civilizations. Basically, they achieved a technology much in excess of the others around them, or at least what was known publicly at the time, and they created a space civilization, the space branch of their civilization, in secret. I know that the Mayans did this. I know that the Babylonians have their own, but also that the Nazis and the Americans had more than one, or have more than one. One name that's sometimes thrown around is Solar Warden. I know that that one in particular appears to be real. And yeah, the whole Nazi thing, there are a lot of conspiracy theories about this, but I can tell you what I have personally confirmed with my own engagements against Nazi efforts is that they have ships in space. They had managed to take over at least one other 3D planet it was actually in the system of Altair. They managed to free themselves, and then they came here all bent on getting revenge for the Nazi invasion, only to realize that most of the planet was not aware that Nazis still existed.
Right.
Or their conception of Nazis were a bunch of skinheads demonstrating in some town somewhere, right? Not that most people around most people on this planet are not aware of the fact that the Nazis did not fizzle out in the 40s. They went to Antarctica, they went to Argentina, and they went to space. And we've clashed with them in Antarctica, and we've clashed with them in space. And yeah, as far as we're concerned, the only good Nazis are dead Nazis.
Yeah.
They're not pleasant people.
Well, I knowing what I know about their history, yeah, they're definitely probably some of the worst of the worst. But so you're saying they're still around? Because I know, obviously, I don't know. I never heard of those theories that they went to space and stuff like that. I never heard of that before. So I wasn't even aware they were actually still around. Like you said, little groups here and there, such as like the KKK and stuff, like those types of people.
Yeah, and you know the real German Nazis, do you know what they think about those groups? They think of them as mongrel scum. So all these people who are walking around with their shaved heads and their jackboots and their stupid little swastikas, like they wouldn't even have been, as far as the Nazis were concerned, they wouldn't even have been good enough for anything.
Right.
That's the really ironic thing. Like all these people who champion this bullshit, yeah, you're not even good enough to be a Nazi.
Right.
You're just dumb.
Well, honestly, that's why I think if we want to go into history a little bit with Hitler and stuff, that's why it's so interesting to me, because he was half Jewish, correct?
Yes, he was.
And he was the leader of the party.
Which means he was Jewish.
Right. And it was just kind of interesting that it was such horrifying time in history. So that's kind of interesting to learn that you're saying they're still around and they're still here. We just aren't really completely aware of them.
Yeah, well, Admiral Byrd, if you've ever heard of Operation High Jump, so that was when Admiral Byrd took a fleet to Antarctica to confront the Nazis. The fact of that they were confronting Nazis wasn't exactly published to the American public or anyone else. This was in the middle of the Cold War. People weren't exactly talking about stuff like that openly. He took a force down to Antarctica, and he came back with his tail between his legs because they had anti-gravity tech and all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, what came out of that is basically the Nazi forces agreed to leave North America alone, and that's when Antarctica got coded as an international area where nobody was allowed to own it, right? It's held in common to everyone. And that's largely why, because it's full of Nazis. But not just Nazis. There's other groups there. Heck, we've got a base in Antarctica.
Now, it's kind of funny you bring that up. I was just learning more about this and stuff. Antarctica is very interesting, and there are endless theories about it and stuff. I've never even heard of what you're talking about with other groups and stuff being there. So what is, like, Antarctica? Because I know it's supposedly not just Antarctica. There's a lot of stuff going on there. There's saying that's the entrance to the inside of the world. I mean, there's just theories after theory after theory. So what is going on out there?
Well, from what I can confirm, there are a number of factions with a number of bases there. there is an entryway to some of the tunnel system. The Earth isn't hollow like a tennis ball, but there is a complex tunnel system, an extensive tunnel system below the surface. And yeah, you can access it at either of the polar regions. There's an exit point or an entrance point to those tunnel systems, and you can get in. And those are heavily contested and guarded, shall we say. You probably can't walk with your sled and just go in there. Both the North Pole and Antarctica are extremely hostile environments out of those entryway points. So the average person attempting to get there is going to have a rough time. Like, it is a hard journey. I would 100% die. That is tough, right? The average person isn't up to that journey.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, because like I said, I always heard so many theories about it, but there's just too many to even look into. So that's interesting. You're saying that. I get it would make sense.
It's very difficult for the average person to confirm directly.
Right.
So basically, all we have is expert testimonial, which may or may not be accurate. Like, I haven't been there myself. I don't know. I know what my people tell me. I know what I've experienced when I'm doing remote work, but how reliable that is, I don't know.
Interesting.
I do know that it's a hotly contested area.
Right. Well, I was going to ask that if all these different colony or whatever you want to call them are living up there, obviously they all have vastly different beliefs and stuff. So how are they all living up there at the same time and not destroying everything and killing each other?
It's almost like there's kind of like an entente, if you're familiar with the term, where everybody there just sort of mutually agrees to leave everyone else alone, because otherwise, the moment you step up to cause trouble for somebody, you're kind of open to it yourself, right?
Right.
So it becomes kind of a live and let live. And people will basically ask me, like, why don't we just fucking, pardon the language, why don't we just cowboy our way through stuff? Why don't we just get heavy-handed and shut everyone down? And that's because, well, there's a bit of a balance of power. And the moment you start cowboying, everybody else is like, nope, they're cowboys, get rid of them.
Yeah. Interesting.
It is not the Wild West. It is not without its organization and hidden rules, right?
Right.
You can't just walk in and do what you want. Other people will fight back.
Right. No, very interesting.
And anybody who's going in to mess up the balance is going to get everyone on them.
That's true. No, I get what you're saying, because I've never, like I said, I've never even heard of that, but that was kind of just one of my first thoughts, like, how would they all live, like, there, quote-unquote, peacefully, but like you said, it would just cause more damage than it would for them to have any sort of success, right?
So you see lots of covert action, and you see the occasional raid where somebody will do something that's justifiable sort of to the whole cult, like everybody, and then retaliation is justified by everyone. Like, for instance, say you've got 6 factions down there. All of them are blood enemies and would easily kill each other, but they can't attack each other because if Faction A attacks Faction B, Faction C, D, E, and F are going to jump down their throat. But if Faction B does something covertly to Faction A is clear to retaliate without the others, because it's sort of like, well, you brought it on yourself. So it's almost like it's a bit of a Cold War in Antarctica. Pun not intended.
I was going to say pretty literally, too, huh? Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating to learn different things from up there and stuff, because I was always curious about that. So it's kind of good to know what you think, what you know is going out there and stuff, you know, because like I said, I've heard a lot of theories about it, but never heard that one. So interesting.
Yeah, it's important to understand that nobody owns the field.
Right.
So, yeah, everybody's sort of being extra cautious and keeping it to covert measures, because you never know when everybody else is going to take exception to what you're doing.
Yeah, too bad.
And while you might be able to handle one group at a time, you sure can't handle all of them. Nobody can. It's a delicate situation.
Interesting. Yeah, too bad. It's too bad Santa and the elves aren't up there. They probably would be a lot better.
Sorry, it's too bad. What is?
I said too bad Santa and the elves aren't up there. It would probably be a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy, Mecha Santa and his elven battalions.
Yeah. Now, so I do want to kind of go back a little bit more to like the videos and stuff going on, and now especially since you're talking about the different societies and stuff in Antarctica, and like you said, up in space and everything. So do you know which one they actually belong to, or like you said, we were trying to figure it out? Do you know which one they actually belong to? The videos that were shown?
No, that it looks like Solar Warden, but again, that's what I'm being told. That could be incorrect.
Gotcha. And so I don't know anything about them. Are they? I wouldn't know how to say. Are they good? Are they bad? Or
Solar Warden. Now the thing you gotta understand is most of the Terran secret space programs, SPP or SSP, most of them were founded by Cabal.
gotcha.
Now, I think you're probably familiar enough with my previous work that you already know what I mean when I say the Cabal.
Yes, I do.
So this was using what some people call the deep state and the military-industrial complex to funnel funds and materials and personnel away from like legitimate civilian fronts to these secret space programs. What I've learned from hearing from survivors, and I've spoken directly to some survivors, some of you guys may have heard of things like the Mars program, stuff like that.
Right.
That was run under the auspices of these SSPs. And it was largely run and recruited and maintained by the Cabal. That said, most of the participants were not Cabal. They were recruited from basically anybody who had the right sort of standardized testing, identified potentials in them, and they were scooped young. I know some survivors, they were oftentimes diagnosed with like childhood cancers and stuff like that. Anything that gave them an excuse to be in the hospital for large lengths of time, unsupervised by their actual parents. And during those times, they would be then put through training and time shifted because they had a way to go out of time and serve their time in the program and then get age regressed and put back as, little 6-year-olds and with no memories of what's going on other than occasional traumatic breaks because some stuff can't get erased, right?
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I never heard of that. Wow. Yeah,
there are a number of secret space program survivors that talk about this material online. The interesting thing is those who've managed to recover memories, a lot of those memories are not complete. They're fragmentary. Some of them differ from each other. Again, this was done on purpose so that when the survivors got together and tried to compare notes, there would be something in their memories that would be like, oh no, I don't believe you because my memory was different, right? There was differences seeded so that they wouldn't be able to coordinate and communicate outside if they managed to recover their memories. It's a Charlie Foxtrot.
Right.
I feel bad for the people who got scooped in that because they had no idea what they were getting into. They didn't know who they were really working for. Yeah.
No, I was going to ask, because like you said, their memories were erased and stuff, how did they find out that they were survivors and stuff? So you're saying some of them do get their memories back slightly?
Yeah, some of them got their memories back. We tend to think of memories as something that's stored in our physical brain. And then you think, well, if I just use the right combination of like electricity or drugs or stuff like that, I can erase those memories and they don't exist anymore. Well, I'm sorry, I got news for you, Muffin. Memories are not all stored within the physical brain. And some of that could come leaking through.
Right. Right. No, very interesting. Yeah, that's I've never heard of that before. So I never even heard of these the secret space programs and stuff. I've never Never heard of that. There's just, can I be honest? There's just so much stuff to learn, and it's really kind of hard to find places to get this information.
It's hard because they're so hard to find reliable information. And you'll hear very earnest, very honest-seeming people who give you completely conflicting information.
Right.
And then it's like, well, how do I figure this out for myself? How do I know what's true or not? And it's very, very difficult to sort that out. Even I don't take what's told to me, even by very earnest, very honest-seeming people, for granted. I see if I can triangulate it. We have a saying, right? Trust but verify. And I didn't come up with this saying. It's a saying that's existed in intelligence communities for a long time.
Right.
And so when somebody comes to me with something that sort of fits with what I already understand to be the case, I will trust it, but I will make sure that it's got other I'll see if I can triangulate from other sources that aren't related to that one.
Right.
And if I get 3 triangulations, if I get 3 sort of confirmations from non-biased sources or non-involved sources, then I'm fairly confident in it. But still, at any moment, I understand, okay, yeah, it could be BS, right? It is a tricky thing. You have to navigate it with wisdom. You can't become attached emotionally to any particular thing. You have to be ready to change if evidence points elsewhere. And so now, even some of the things that I deeply hold to be true, if I had significant evidence that I was able to triangulate tomorrow showing them not to be the case, I'd have to go with what the evidence says.
Right. Now, I have to ask you too. You're with the Silver Legions and everything, obviously. How did you even get into that? Like, what? How did that develop? Where you started this? I don't know if you necessarily started it, but how did you get involved with this and then get into everything?
Oh boy, that might be a story that goes on beyond your time slot here. I was 16 when I first started to recover memories of who I was and what I am.
Okay.
For the record, I'm not anywhere near 16. I'm pushing 40 here. So this was a long time ago, and I didn't have any particular special knowledge at that time. Nobody came forward to tell me, "Oh, hey, Tanath, this is what you are." I built my understanding of myself bit by bit, and it was probably a good 10 or 15 years of doing that before I started to go active with this. It was around the early 2000s when I realized that I was involved with the Silver Legion. I still did not have a clear understanding at that point of what we were, or our history, or how long we've been around, or all of that. Like, it was just little bits and recollections that came in, just like, oh, I'm part of the Silver Legion. Oh, okay. What's that? Oh, well, we're kind of an army that does hero stuff. We recruit heroes. Okay, now what? I don't know. Okay, put it on the shelf for now, right?
Interesting. Right.
And then in the around 2010, I really got an internal pull to go active and start doing research. And the things that I was most strongly pulled towards were information about the global conspiracy, which I hadn't really given much thought to before. I'd sort of, on an academic level, I had sort of been like, yeah, there's probably a conspiracy going on, but I can't prove it, so I'm just going to shelve it, right? I got a really strong internal push to look at that information and start going through all of it, or as much of it as I could. And I got a really strong internal push to sort of look at the information on aliens, which I hadn't had much to do with aliens. It has sort of been an academic thing, like, oh yeah, aliens exist, but other than that, I don't have any business with them, right?
Right.
And this whole notion of a shift or ascension, that was the third thing I was sort of pushed inside to look into. Right. Now, I still don't know what I think about the ascension stuff.
Yeah. Because
it seems that the claims of the Andromeda Council, which we originally took as trustworthy, it seems that they're 2014 passed without anything significant happening. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, because I kind of, because from what it sounds like, even though you kind of had these hints and stuff, was it kind of scary at first, because you're just kind of living your normal life, and then you kind of start having these memories and stuff. Was that kind of scary to you, or was it just like
Well, the
normal?
memories, that I have been dealing with since I was 16, so it was no longer scary to me.
Right.
The scary thing to me was coming out and becoming public. I had a really strong inner push to do it. But at the same time, I understood very much that I had no proof and I had nothing that would that I could give to people as evidence or proof of what I believe or what I experience.
Right.
But at a certain point, I realized, well, that doesn't really matter. The ones who it's going to be helpful for, they're going to hear what I say. They're going to go out and address those claims on their own, and then they're going to come back and say, oh, yeah, this is what I found, right?
Right.
The people who are already doing stuff like out-of-body stuff and astral travel, I don't need to prove to them that those things exist. They're doing it already.
Right.
Yeah. For everyone else, it's everybody's at a different level, right? I would consider what I do stuff like post-grad fellowship. Some people are still in grade school.
Right.
They'll get there eventually, but I'm not responsible for getting them there.
Right. Yeah, and before the internet and stuff, how did people kind of communicate with each other and get involved with it and stuff, and really be able to do their research? How did that happen?
Prior to the internet, it was very difficult to research these subjects. A lot of times what you had were people who went to things called cons. And nowadays we tend to think about cons like, VidCon or,
right.
Entertainment things. But then they had UFO cons back in the day. I was never a part of them. I've never had money to go to cons. Like, are you kidding? I got student loans to pay off. I don't have time for cons. Yeah, my degrees were self-funded.
Right.
Loans. I got to pay that off. Yeah, they would go to cons where people would give basically keynote speakers and stuff like that, give out conference notes. They'd exchange stuff. There were a few UFO magazines, but back in those days, it was very, very difficult to get reliable information, and most of it you had to pay money to get. The internet was a great equalizer. When forums started to come on, there was one forum called Above Top Secret, ATS. They were quite famous. ATS is very much a mixed bag. It is basically your conspiracy grab bag theory, or it was. I haven't been on ATS in years. But you could find everything from, the Queen Elizabeth is a lizard person to, the Greys are coming to,
Right.
Satan and his legions are going to come spilling through CERN or whatever.
Right.
All kinds of grab bags. All of them, none of which could be, shall we say, none of which are possible simultaneously in the same reality.
Right. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I was gonna ask because obviously this has been around forever, so I was kind of intrigued how it would work before internet and stuff.
Yeah, it was not nearly as good, and a lot of it was very. We have much more access to information, but by the same token, we have to do a lot more work of picking through that information and seeing what kind of quality it is.
Right. Yeah,
But it was that lack of access to information that sort of led to the creation of the American UFO sphere, ufology sphere, where everything sort of focused on the big four, things like the reptilians, the Greys, the Nordics, and the bug guys, right?
Right.
So people who come out of that sort of intellectual tradition, those are the ETs that they're focusing on. But if you look over the pond at what happened in like Russia had very exhaustive understanding of about like 100 different UFO species.
Wow.
And if you look up the Alien Blue Book by the Russian author, I think it's Dante Santori, I think is his name. It goes into some fairly big depth about maybe about 30 or 40 species that are never mentioned in American ufology.
Wow.
And it's kind of interesting to see the contrast in information, because if you came at the American stuff, and I read books in the 90s, because that's what you had back then. You had published books, magazines, conference papers, and conferences. And I read some books back in the 90s, and they were all focused on the Greys and, alien autopsy type stuff.
Right.
And it was basically garbage.
Right. Yeah, no, I was gonna ask, because it does sound, every time I have you on, there's like so much more, and it's really hard to keep track of, and obviously I'm not into it as much as you are and stuff, so it's really hard to understand, but it sounds like there's so many species, everything going on at the same time, so it must be very difficult for you, especially to find all of it and keep track of it,
Oh yeah, I don't even bother at this point, because I have the stuff that I deal with on a daily basis,
Right.
and most of that does not correspond to, shall we say, the assumptions that sort of came out of the 90s.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, it's just so fascinating, everything that's going on, and I think it's really important to learn more and to be open-minded and to really do your research, and like you said, do it yourself and not just completely rely on mainstream media and stuff, and especially when
or even alternative media.
Exactly.
Because here's the thing, no one is 100% right, no one is 100% wrong.
Absolutely.
Even some of these limited holdouts and stuff like that, limited hangouts, will have some information that is useful. You have to kind of pick and choose your way through stuff.
Right.
I have stuff that, I believe very strongly that I've backed up that might not turn out to be fully reality when all is said and done. But it is, I will say to my credit, I do my due diligence. And when I say something and I'm confident of it, it's because I've backed it up and checked it. And I'll usually say if I'm not confident of stuff.
Right.
Like with the COVID stuff, I have a lot of hearsay that I have, but I have nothing I'm confident of other than the fact that, well, statistics are showing it's nowhere near as bad as we thought.
Right. And do you think it was man-made, or do you think it's natural, or do you not even really want to talk about it?
I don't know if I want to speculate. I will say that what I've been told from my upstairs contacts is that it appears to have been an accidental release.
Interesting.
But not of something engineered. Basically, somebody got peed on by a bat or something.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's kind of, it's especially this, it happens so quickly, and I mean, we knew about it for months in China and stuff, but we never really paid attention to it, or didn't really know what to think of it, and then it just kind of happened.
Signs point to this having been in the general public back before Christmas.
Yeah.
So it's just our understanding of it that sort of came on at that time, right?
Right. No, I was deathly sick in late November, early December, and it lasted for honestly probably 2 months, and I really thought I was going to end up in the hospital and stuff, and I couldn't breathe, and it was really bad and scary.
Chances are you had it. You had it and you recovered.
I know.
I worked with kids, right? Like I'm a substitute teacher, and well, not anymore because of everything shut down.
Right.
But I got really sick back in November, December.
Yeah.
For about 4 weeks, and it was snot, more snot, but not much more than that, right?
Right. Yeah, it was pretty intense, and like you said, you don't really know if you had it or not, or if it was something else going on at the time, but there was definitely some sort of bad virus outbreak at that time period. Whether it was definitely this or not, I guess we'll never truly know for sure, but it was very scary no matter what,
It is interesting to see now that they're doing tests of immunological status, serum tests. Basically, they test your serum antibodies, and a lot more of the population than anticipated is coming up with serum antibodies to COVID-19, which means that it's been in the general population a lot longer than we thought, and a lot more extensively.
Right.
And that also tells us that it's not nearly the problem we thought it was.
Yeah.
Because if it was, we would have had death rates spiking long before we were aware of something going on, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, it's just it's just a kind of a crazy time, but I'm really glad we had you on and we could really kind of discuss this and other insane things that are going on in the world at the time. So I'm so glad you were able to come back and do this. I'm glad our station's finally open again so we could discuss this, because I really was so bummed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, how long will it be till we can finally get her back on? But here we are, so thank goodness.
Yeah, and it's been a pleasure to chat with you, and to let the public know that, yes, I'm still alive. We're still here. We're
Yeah.
still doing stuff. We
That's
don't
right.
talk about it, but we are.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on, and just please keep safe and everything. And I'm so glad, and maybe we'll have you on again next year.
Sure.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tanath.
Yeah, take care.
All right, you too. And thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, never give up, always believe, and you'll achieve. Thank you, and God bless.